Hi, Anneke.
Hi, Anneke.
Can you see me? Can you hear me? Yes, we are on.
Yeah.
I will turn my my airplane mode on. So super nice. We are here. How cool is that? Hi, Anneke. Welcome.
Hi, Anneke.
So good to see you.
Very nice to do this with you.
Yeah. So what time is it now in New York?
2 p.m.
2 p.m. Good. Here it's 8 p.m. So we were going to start at 8 p.m. So that's now. I will stop this share and now I'm going to see you and myself only, and the little slide is gone. So welcome everybody. I see a lot of people are already joining us. There were lots of people signing up, and maybe some participants will join us in a few minutes. If you're not online now live, don't worry, because we will send a replay to everybody who signed up. But if you are online now, welcome, and I'm so happy to have you here in our online masterclass. And to start, I would like to share a few practical things with you that are maybe easy to know during this webinar. Like maybe you see there is a little chat box, so you can click on this chat and you can ask questions there. There is also a Q&A there. If you look down, you see a Q&A. Let's use it this way. If you have questions during this online meetup, online masterclass, please put all your questions in the Q&A box. So then sometimes in this masterclass, Anneke and I, we will check it, and we will answer the questions during the webinar or at the end. And then we'll just see how far we get. If there are more questions, then we find another way to answer your question. But all your questions will be answered. And so better not use the chat function, because then it's in two places. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A to ask your questions. Then we will be here till 9 o'clock in Amsterdam time, so for 1 hour. And like I said, the questions will be answered somewhere in between as well. So just at any time, don't wait until the end with your question. Just when something pops up, just share it with us in the Q&A. At the end, we will send you the replay, and also we will send you a link with some resources. So that is what you can expect after this. Yeah, I guess that's it. If you have if you have anything to add, Anneke, just let me know. And otherwise, we can just start now, I think.
Yes, I think we were going to do talk about a half hour about the 3 subjects, and we are going to focus mostly on the essential nature of boundaries, and mention permission and mention safety within that context more, because we have so little time. And then we would focus the next 20 minutes or so on the questions and see where the questions take us in this. And then at the end, we're going to just talk about a few things that we're going to do together later. And that was what my
yeah. That's super. And there will be another webinar. So this one, the first one, we focus on the essential nature of these of boundaries and of these principles, let's say. And then in the second webinar, we will see how we can use it as a professional application of these principles that we are discussing here. And of course, you can work with us live as well later in the Netherlands. So let's start with a little introduction. Maybe you can introduce yourself, Anneke?
Sure. So let me just clarify that the second webinar we're going to be doing on Monday, January the 28th, and it's going to be at the same time. So it's going to be 2 p.m. in New York City and 8 p.m. in Holland.
Yep.
And I just hear that my cat has just jumped in a bag. So you may hear a little noise in the background here. I'm sorry about that. The cat's jumped in the bag. My name is Anneke Lucas. I am a survivor first and founder of Liberation Prison Yoga that was founded in 2014. We bring yoga and mindfulness to the jails and prisons in New York. And I also have worked extensively with survivors, not only inside the prisons and jail, but outside as well. I'm an advocate for survivors, and I write. And my writing focuses a lot on my own story, which is a story of 30 years of healing after extreme abuse in childhood, and then 10 years of working professionally with others who have been through various degrees of trauma. And what came out of that healing and that work is the unconditional model, which is what I'm starting to spread more and more now.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Great. So welcome, Anneke. Well, my name is Anneke too, and Anneke Sips. I'm a registered nurse from the Netherlands, from Amsterdam. I started to work in psychiatry 20 years ago as a student nurse, and I worked in complex care a lot, and with highly stigmatized groups. I really like to work with people in psychiatry. It's I think it's really what I was made to do. And also 20 years ago, I started a yoga practice, and all these years I was feeling that this should be melted together in a way, which was a pretty interesting and also difficult journey to find ways to bring those together. But now, here we are in 2018, it's really working out pretty well. So I started network yoga therapy, and I'm a yoga therapist now. So I'm applying the principles of yoga into therapy, and then in mental health care. I like to work with trauma and psychosis very much. So this is what I do. I started network yoga therapy, the yoga therapy conference here in Amsterdam, and teaching, training, also writing a book. I love to share everything that I've learned and in this journey as well. And of course, and we will talk about this also in this online meeting. That my own experiences. These are feeding also the work, of course. And it's really interesting. Like, how can you bring in your own experiences and finding the right boundaries and do it in a way that is safe for me and for the other people I'm working with, like working with people. So and then, like I said, this is also very much the professional application is very much belongs to the next webinar. But what does it mean for myself, and how my personal journey supports my work? It's really interesting. So let's start talking about this, because I think it's nice, Anneke, when we are starting with our own example, right?
Yeah.
Can you say something about it? Like what happened?
Our webinar almost didn't happen.
This webinar.
This webinar that we're in right now, we planned this quite a while ago, and meanwhile, we haven't spoken in a little while. And we were going to speak, right before, but just a few days ago, I sent a reminder to Anneke, we're doing this, we're all set. And I received a reply from Anneke that maybe it was better to delay it, because she had been very busy and she just thought it was going to be too much. And so I received the email, and as I got it, I was triggered. So I was personally triggered because we had planned to do things together before that also were delayed or canceled. And so I was personally triggered, and also was thinking it wasn't a good idea to cancel it. So I had to first go through my own process of the trigger, because in the moment that I got it was actually a WhatsApp text that a nice explanation of why we were not going to do this today, I felt disrespected. I felt that, oh yeah, my story is, she would cancel this thing with me, but maybe she wouldn't cancel it with somebody else. This is all my story. I realized that, and then none of this may have been going on for you. But I had an old trauma story revive, and so I started to think, well, what is it? I'm having an emotional reaction here. What is this about? So I distilled it to the disrespect, feeling disrespected, and having been abused and having been even used as a sex slave. Disrespect, as you can imagine, was very much a part of being disrespected. As a slave, obviously, there's no respect at all, and part of how I was used was in fact for all these people to just dump. So there was zero respect. It wasn't just that I was being abused, it was that I was constantly being treated like less than, and I was being called horrible things, and I was being, treated as an object, as a lesser of little value. And sometimes maybe I was treated with fake respect as an object of value. That is something that we can maybe get into a little bit. But I felt disrespected, and then I had to just connect with my my younger self that was having this emotional reaction. And so I use parts work to connect to younger parts. And then when I was able to see that this is my story and this is nothing to do with Anneke's story, I was able to reach out back to Anneke and say, look, I hope you don't mind if I say this, but I think I really would like to do this, because we said we were going to do 2 webinars, and then we're going to do a workshop together. And I just feel that if we're not going to do it, we're not going to have time to do 2 webinars. And I just like to stick to the plan if possible. And then I let it go. I didn't have any expectation. I thought she's already said she can't do it. I didn't expect then that you were then going to say, okay, great. but
can I
very, very lovely. Yeah.
Can I ask you like a little step back, because you were saying like you felt a certain like old story, like the feeling that belongs to an old story, and this is what triggers do, right? Like you get a trigger, and then something comes up, a feeling, an emotion, and then instead of being overwhelmed with this and feeling like this victim again, you were able to make a different choice. You were able to step back, give it space, and make an action that was actually a valuable action. And how can you share how that works for you? Like how can you create a space between your emotion and your action without being overwhelmed? Because maybe in the past you can still remember that it would overwhelm you and you would react differently.
I do remember. Yeah, no, I was overwhelmed. So first I was just in the emotional space, but I have learned not to act out of that space. Say that I would have acted out of that space, I would have maybe sent you an angry message. And then you would have not only had to deal with the issue at hand, you would have also had to deal with my anger or my issue. So I would have been asking a lot from you there. I would have been asking you to take care of me, as well as to deal with your own issue. So that would be a lot to ask. I may have easily triggered you by doing that, because I was coming from an emotional space. So I would have very easily have triggered you. You could have created a very strong boundary and said, I don't want to deal with this, which is natural. You don't want to always deal with other people's issues, especially, when we're trying to work together. So I've learned to take distance. And the way that I do that is I've used internal family systems, which is a model created by Dr. Richard Schwartz. It's a therapeutic model, but it can be used by one person. And you can go into therapy and do it, but it's really a way to identify your feelings and completely accept them. That is to say, to accept all parts of yourself. Because a lot of times then we have a reaction, and if we were to actually take a little distance from that emotional reaction, we would feel shame. So the internal family systems model has an adult self that is a holistic model where there is this adult. And I'll just give away, a trick that I use, that I have used a lot. I don't use it so much anymore because it comes more naturally to me now. But one way to tell that I'm not in my adult is that the adult self, the self with a capital S, has many qualities, but particularly 4 that I will just make my fingers into 4 C's. And so I used to just sort of like cramp my fingers to think about, because I'm having a feeling, so I want to just make sure I'm in my adult self. And if any of these 4 would be missing, and we can write them in the chat if you like, it means that I'm not in my adult self, because the adult will be connected, that is to self and others.
Wait, I'm writing it.
Okay.
To myself and others.
Oh, you could just say connected, but thank you. That's very, very thorough. Curious, calm, and compassionate. So there are these 4 qualities. There are more, but those 4 are pretty solid, that if any of these 4 may be missing, and I'm doing my little 4C thing, just because I'm having an emotional reaction, and if it's anywhere strong, if it's anything that's slightly negative even, or it's just a strong feeling, it could be a very strong positive feeling, like when you're falling in love, you better check, because you may not be in your adult when you're experiencing these feelings. And so it's just a quick way to say, okay, I'm in a part, I'm not in an adult self. And then, I'm not going to get into that all the way right now, but just to know that there are these different parts of the self. And of course, coming from an adult perspective always ensures that we are emotionally safe, that we have clear boundaries, because the communication won't be charged. It will be a communication from my adult self. And of course, when we speak about permission, it has a lot to do with having the clarity of knowing what I need and what I want in this moment. And that's just as much for the adult self as the adult accepting that these parts that I have within me have needs. And I'm going to try as the adult to help these needs be fulfilled as much as possible. And to categorize the parts has really helped me to break through the shame.
Yes. Wow. Well, it's so beautiful that we can share this now, also connecting to our own little experience.
Our own thing, yes.
Yeah, but
what was happening with you?
Yeah, but this is what it's all about, I think. And this is also what it's about in this webinar today. It's about the principles, applying it to yourself, because it really starts there. Like we both are doing our own things, and we work in similar fields, but we are very different in our own way, of course. And what I'm working on is a project, Be Your Own Therapist, because in my experience, I really see it like this. Like we are our own therapist, and it really needs to start with ourselves. When we are working with other people, and I think all the people who signed up are in some way connecting or care for other people, like maybe as healthcare workers, yoga teachers, yoga therapists, maybe parents, or, we care for others. And we use ourselves this way as an instrument. And if we're not, like we all know that we need to take care of ourselves first, but it's this kind of stuff. It's really like therapeutically care about ourselves, because we all have our past and our traumas and our things. And how are we engaging with others in this world? It's very important to really think about that. Like, and am I able to take a pause and take some space from whatever is happening here? Because even two professionals who went through a whole journey, who wants to work together, stuff happens. Stuff happens. But it's so beautiful, I think, to acknowledge this, and I am very thankful for that this happened actually, and also like for me in this situation. So it happened that you were putting your boundary. You said no. Like I was first putting a boundary. I said no. I'm going for self-care here. I'm, I'm always talking about self-care to everybody and compassion, self-compassion. You know what? I feel uh, very busy and I think I need a little delay for this thing. So I'm having a hard time saying what I need. And I was going to practice this.
You did.
And I did. So I said, listen, Anneke, I know we have our agreement for Monday, but let's just delay it for 1 week. It's okay. And then I get a reaction of you, no, I would like to. And it's beautiful how I felt safe to say what I needed. Because yes, my need was to give a little break, but also my need was to be listened to. And my need was to share what I really feel about this. And if it's safe enough to do this, that's a present in itself, I think.
Well, I hope that my response to you felt safe, even though, because I had taken out the blame and I stopped the first initial, if I'm triggered, it actually means that I make you into an abuser. And because if I'm the victim, then what are you?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in my victim place, what are you?
Yeah.
So if I feel that I'm disrespected, I also feel that you are disrespecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes you, which is totally not your intention, it totally makes you into actually a perpetrator of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens in a split second, the moment we are triggered.
Yes.
So to have gotten myself out of that, I hope that I addressed you in a way that somehow you were able to feel heard.
Yeah.
You can talk about that, how it was, you received my message. I said, I hope I'm not, upsetting you by saying this.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can work together? I mean, I hope that I helped you to feel also heard, because by that time you were not. I went back to seeing you as Anneke, who is working hard and doing her best and is not at all trying to be disrespectful.
Yeah. No, and this is how it felt for me, and for me, at the same time, looking at you, thinking, and this is another subject. I think this is very important to address today, and this is a little bridge to it. It's the intent. So I was, I knew, I was believing, I chose to believe that you were not there to piss me off. You did not did those on purpose to piss me off. I knew that you had some good reasons for this, because that is like, can also be triggered, like, Jesus, what's wrong with her, or why is the whole world against me, or why is it always happening to me, or why is nobody ever listening to me, or why can I never set my boundaries, I'm always doing everything for everybody, and now one time I'm setting all these kind of things, we all know them. I know them from the past. But I'm happy that I can say that I know them from the past, and they're still there, like all these parts in yourself, and they are still part of the family, but they're not running the show. So
exactly, they're not running the show.
They're not running the show. So all these feelings that are coming up, and also I had space to create some distance, and I chose to think like this. And I think working with trauma, it's very important to experience this and to know how this feels. Because if we are talking with other people, trying to tell them you need to take space and you need to let it go, all these things. Yes. You all know it's not so easy, because it's like sticking on you, that feeling. You are that feeling, and so how is this for you? Like, how can you can you see my intention, and did you learn something in your journey about this? Like, how can you choose again to see the good in people? Because you said that I was a perpetrator, like this kind of thing.
Well, there's
that shift,
making you a perpetrator, me making you a perpetrator, where you are not at all. But then there's also, and I think empaths and like myself, my hardest challenge in staying emotionally safe and setting clear boundaries, which are, I like to say a boundary is not a wall. It is a boundary. There's like flexibility implied within that word. So it's not this absolute thing. And then giving permission. I'm thinking of, even though I'm celibate, I was approached years ago, really, but it just took a slow, by someone who seemed to have this desire to care for me. And my father complex, I was drawn in. And so I was looking both at the part that had this need to be cared for in a fatherly way, and protected, protected, and at my looking at this part and trying to get this need met for this part from my adult self. And even though there was no romantic connection there, I was allowing that to enter into that space, without any physicality, without any attraction, to get what I needed, to give my part what she needed. Now, I spoke about respect earlier, and there was this fake respect, this caring for that a lot of people who are set up as big protectors, as big, hero protector kind of people. It's a fake respect. It's like a lot of, beautiful people experience this kind of fake respect all the time, because that fake respect is connected to the attraction. And the attraction is connected to having unresolved trauma parts, basically, seeking to overpower this person that we're attracted to. When we enter into this dance, like it can be a dance in an intimate relationship, or it can be a dance that I was into, was just an emotional kind of connection with someone who was a friend, that there are similar issues. We're attracted to people that have the same issue as we do, but they may be playing out this issue from the other side. So one person is going to replay the victim, and the other person is going to replay the abuser. And so somebody who, like, that was really presenting as, a safe person, and then creating an emotionally safe space that I could enter into any time, very attractive. But there was this other element that I was blind to, because my part was needing this experience, still looking for the father. So the other side of that, it happens in relationships often, that you're with someone and after a while it flips, and you just suddenly are with this other person that you never realized, and boundaries are getting crossed. And maybe because it took such a long time to get there, you're just so baffled, you just want to get back to seeing this person as you first saw them, except they're not anymore, and they're now playing games, and they can very easily look like the perpetrators of the past, or the emotionally unsafe parents that you had, or the neglectful parents that you had. And when a child is in that space with parents or with caregivers, the intention seems malicious, because parents really should be there for their children, should be emotionally available for their children. And it is what children naturally expect. So if the parents are not there in that way, it seems that the parents know better. They are like gods to the child. So it seems that their intention is as evil as the child experiences it. And when we get triggered, there's always this question of, well, I'm working with somebody who has no self-awareness, who is not capable of looking at the ways that they were provoking me, and that I needed to get away. I needed to take distance from that. So they're not looking at the way that they are recreating abandonment. And in the meantime, they're going to put a lot of anger out with me. And as long as that was through thoughtlessness and crossing, passive aggressiveness, which I could all pick up on, I was open to some degree to negotiating. But then it crossed into overt aggressiveness. And then there is this point, like there's a message that's overtly aggressive. Now, what do I do? I'm grateful to say that I had my internal self-esteem, it's like sense of self and self-esteem said, can't do it. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But that's because my self-esteem is healed. What if this was before, when my self-esteem was not very good, and someone does something that is aggressive, but there's a long lead up to it. And so I'm hoping that this person is going to be the protector figure that I wanted, that my part, especially this girl in me, wanted. But here is this aggression being directed at me, and I didn't provoke anything. It was all coming from them. So now that this line has been crossed and there's overt aggression being directed at me, I have to set a boundary, whether I want to or not. I have to set a boundary. I have to protect that child in me and say, no, we're not going there. I may have had a lot of parts that were masochistic from my abuse. And the ways in which I felt loved. I may have had a lot, because of my abuse, felt, oh, just bring it on. I can take it. I can take it. And my boundary is going to be much farther. And of course, I find the people that are going to test that and are going to take me there and suck all the energy out of me. So I said, okay, there was one message like this, that no, this is it. No more. I cannot help this person anymore. And it's really that. It's to let go of my desire, of my managing young part that acts like an adult, to care for that person and to want to help them, Yeah. There's nothing I can do. If you direct overt aggression at me, there's just nothing I can do for you anymore. No. And I have to detach. Yeah. And right now I have to say, because of that dance that we were playing, I feel the aggression coming at me. I feel it, but I'm not engaging. And there's ways in which that person even tries to reconnect or make me angry. I'm not engaging. It's not about them.
I saw that somebody was raising a hand. That's interesting.
Like, hello, may I speak?
Esther Swinkles is raising her hands. And actually, I never tried it before, but I can try, allow her to talk. I can press that button. Shall I try if we can allow Esther to talk?
I have a question right up here.
Esther, are you there?
Maybe she doesn't want to talk.
Yeah, but then unmute.
Well, meanwhile, I'll
I cannot unmute her. So Esther, I'm trying to unmute you, but if you want, you can type your question, and then we can answer your question directly. And actually, this counts for everybody. If you feel like a question is rising, just type your question, and we see this, and we can answer your question. So
yes, finish my point about guessing at intent, because what I learned from this interaction, where someone is actually projecting completely and has no awareness that they're in a part, right? And goes from being apologetic to being aggressive. They are ignorant. I have to say that this comes from ignorance. And so even the parents or the parental figures in my childhood who were abusing me were ignorant. And so the question of intent at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Even with sadism, where it seems that a person is so intentional, it still comes from a place of complete ignorance. And so it's to understand that it's not about the other person. Exactly. It's about us and how we react, how we respond, and how we are able to care for ourselves and set our boundaries. And coming from that place of the mature self. So that that we don't get stuck in this cycle of anger and you know, betrayal.
Yeah. And this, well, this you need courage for this, I think, to invite that part within yourself. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it brings you inner peace, because if you you know, you don't know, like you said, you don't know the intention of the other person, the intent of the other person, you don't know. And even if it's a good intent or it's not a good intent,
Right.
you don't know. And also,
even if they're completely blind and they're trying to hurt you,
yeah,
their intention doesn't matter. What matters if I'm going to engage with a person like that, well, then it's me. Then it's on me.
yes.
Because as an adult, when I was a child, I was a victim. If I'm in some kind of situation where there is a figure of power and they abuse their power, I can be victimized. But as an adult, generally, I can conduct myself as an adult, and I have the responsibility and the accountability of an adult.
Yeah.
And so the moment I feel like a victim, I think the biggest trick is to break through the shame. I think behind, you know, even with that person, I think the reason that they can't take the distance from that part is either because the trauma is so deeply buried and they're too protective of the original power figure, too scared. So the trauma is buried, so there's no connection to the actual trauma to even know what to connect to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can just manage your own behavior. And that's why I said, if you're passive aggressive, you may not know it, even though there's things happening there. And if you're thoughtless, well, I can still excuse that, because if someone's thoughtless and I tell them they're thoughtless and they say, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. All right. You know, but if they're overtly aggressive, then, you know, unless they immediately understand and profusely apologize for having gone there,
yeah,
there's no way back, because then I'm allowing it.
but then still, it's your choice. Yeah, like you choose where you want to go. How does this is this disturbing your inner peace, or, you know, is this something you need in your life right now? And what kind of choice do you want to make for yourself? And this way, you're empowered to make your choices and to set your boundaries. Yes. So
Yeah.
to
Hi, Ellie. I'm happy to be connected with you in this way. I love your posts, by the way, and you're very brave. Just want to say that much. And you asked overt aggression via a yoga client. Would you handle this in the same way? A yoga client. So that is someone who's practicing yoga with you. You're their teacher, and they are aggressive. They are aggressive to you.
Is it a one-on-one situation, Ellie? Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So, Anneke, you wanna touch on that? If a yoga client is aggressive towards you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm talking in my trainings a lot about like my experiences, and I'm training people, the yoga teachers, how to use some of these principles in the work. And then there is all kinds of things that can happen in a yoga class, and we address them all. And one of these things is aggression. And to be honest, it never happens.
Okay, so I can speak to it because
but I think I can speak a lot about aggression, because in my work I've seen a lot of aggression. But I think because of that, I'm putting my boundary already. So in the class, in my yoga class, or a one-on-one situation, also it doesn't happen. But maybe because I'm a psychiatric nurse, I'm very experienced in working with a lot of aggression. So I've been very well trained. And I think I start immediately already at the door, like what's happening here, or how is my own energy. And so it's, you know, I think I would stop it like the session would maybe not even take place. You know what I mean? So this is why. But if well, for me, I would say yes. If I'm working with a client, or if I'm working with Anneke Lucas, or if I'm working with any other person, a boundary is a boundary, and it's about my boundary and how I feel about it. And of course, the different situations, maybe my boundaries are a little bit different. I'm also a mother, and my boundary, for example, with my own child is different than my boundary with my clients.
Well, I'll speak very quickly to it because Ellie, you know, working in the prisons adds a lot less aggression than you may expect. But I just want to say that I do allow it actually within this. As a provider, I do allow people to be aggressive at me. I call it testing. And what I try to do when people do that is, first of all, check my own responses if I am being triggered or not. And then two is when someone comes out aggressively, is to respond in a way that I'm not a doormat. I'm not just taking it, but I don't judge you. And so the boundary there has very much to do with whether or not I'm being physically safe. If I'm physically unsafe, obviously it's important to set a clear boundary. But other than that, when people are just testing, I've had tremendous things happen by being able to just take in what they, you know, it became a practice, and actually a very good practice of not judging. Like someone would do something that would be like, you know, a bully kind of move, and I would just practice not judging and just not skipping what they did, but addressing it, maybe even with humor, and then making sure that they understand, if they understand, that they're not being judged for their behavior. And that has gotten people to just turn around instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're testing, and they're testing from a place, from a young place, you know, just like this person personally is also testing from a young place. But you're right, I'm not a provider. I'm not in a provider situation. I have to protect myself. But if I am a provider and I'm working with traumatized people and they express anger towards me, unless there is some danger, unless I am triggered and I can't handle it, I'm going to try to be present for that person with their anger, absolutely, and hold it for a little bit, but also transcend it and know that they're coming from a place of a young place where they're trying to actually get the unconditional love that they never had. And so maybe I can give that, and it is possible to do that. So that's my answer to that. And Anneke, I'm just seeing a question from Marianne.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to add a little thing, because you see the words also trigger something. If I see aggression, I think physical aggression, because this is what I used to. I've been hit and kicked, and you know, this is what happens a lot in my work. But then I totally agree on everything you say, and yeah, it's a beautiful answer. There was a question from Marianne. She is asking, to set boundaries request courage. You might find courage to set the first step and communicate your boundaries. What is your advice on building mental strength and keep courage to resist on the harassment following your refusal or communication of boundaries? Usually old mental patterns are, this is the samskaras, but we talk about also.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been through that process, Marianne, absolutely. And yes, it does take courage. I absolutely agree.
No worries.
It requires a lot of courage. And so I think, sorry, the mailman just came. Ash, come here. Come here, I'll give you a treat. Come here. Come here. Sorry. So I just want to say, Marianne, it's by doing it very imperfectly. Because when I first found my courage to set boundaries, I was actually quite aggressive in doing it. And so it just created a lot of issues from being so aggressive, but it was actually more important to just set the boundary, even if it came with all my anger and very imperfectly and created other problems, than to not set the boundary. Yes. So I think it's a great question. The mental strength comes from the practice itself. So it's just like a muscle. The more you practice setting boundaries, the more fluid you become in it, and the more it becomes like a language that you know how to speak.
And can I add something to this?
Absolutely.
Because this is, I can hook this also to the experience with aggression. Because even like you said, if there's physical aggression, like that's not okay. But if there is some like personal aggression, it's mostly within a person himself or herself. And I kind of
come here. Come here. Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
kind of I would like to bring it to the front, actually, to show people like you're trying to set your boundary, and maybe this is your way of coping with a situation. You are practicing setting boundaries, and actually it's a very good thing. The only way, maybe we can see if there are more healthy ways of doing so. Maybe we can together look into it, like maybe we can find different ways or something like this. But people are trying to set their boundaries. Like you said, maybe it's not the perfect way of doing it at the beginning. Also, other people may be doing it like this. They are hurt. They are trying to cope with something that hurt them. They react to this. They're trying to set their boundary. Maybe not in a very perfect way immediately.
That's right. So absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned the courage, because it does take courage. And courage is simply to do what you're afraid of and to do it anyway. I mean, that there's something that you're afraid of that might be easier not to do, and then do it anyway. Yeah. That's what courage really is. And I would say that in our climate, in our emotional climate of the world today, it requires so much courage, because there's still fewer people with a lot of courage. There's still a very good chance that you're not going to be heard, that someone's not going to understand you, that someone knows nothing about trauma, and so you might find yourself the first and all alone in setting a boundary. Like, say there's a situation, there may be a lot of people involved, and you might be the first and only one to say, no, I'm standing up against this. And I know a lot of brave women like this, having been the first or one of the only ones, and all alone in a very large community often. So yes, it takes a lot of courage, and there's a lot of loneliness, and it's just a good thing that we're connecting, that we can connect, and we can do this together, and we have at least some resources and some support from each other.
Yes,
to keep doing it.
And then even in these communities, sometimes it's very difficult, even though now we are creating these communities. And I think this whole Me Too movement was bringing up a lot, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this is the question on courage and setting boundaries, and in case of aggression. So we've been talking about, we started with our example and how this was triggering you and how it was triggering me, and how we worked through this. I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to recap a little bit what we were doing today. So we were talking about some essential principles. We were talking mostly about the respect and how to set a boundary, how to create space between you and a trigger, something that happens to you. You gave us this beautiful tool, this for the C's. Yeah, but it's so beautiful. It really offers help if you have this little gesture with it, because just a little test for everybody who's in here. What were the C's again? And of course you can scroll all the way up and you see it, but it's really good to try to find your own.
Yeah, it's not too much to memorize.
It's not so much, yeah. And then for me, it's also I'm a very visual person, and my brain always goes in creative directions. I also see this like like hooks, like this.
Oh wow!
Oh, you never thought of that?
No, no, no.
Yeah, I see this as this is, and it's like cramp. It's cramps. Like, you want to release your fingers, right? So not. So I think those four you want to release. I think that's that was what it did to me.
I love
So
that.
so we were talking about all these essentials for ourselves, especially this, because there's really, this is where it starts. It starts with ourselves. We can use all kinds of tools, and I personally like the tools of yoga and meditation and mindfulness to practice these skills and to practice feeling my body to start with. Notice what happens within my body, taking a pause, and this way create some distance from everything that is happening around us, all the situations you can end up being in. And then with this, in this pause, it's not only taking a pause, but then there you find a way to make the right judgment to the situation. You make a choice. And especially when you have a past with trauma, sometimes it's very hard to find this distance and to see that you have a choice here. And then if you do have a choice, how do you make the right choice? Because you're going to act in a certain way. And you were choosing to act in a certain way. I was choosing, in our example, to act in a certain way. And it's beautiful to see that there was space. It was safe. And also I told you in my message, I think, that I felt safe to tell you how I feel and to set my boundary. Because, and this is a present that you gave to me, or that we are giving to each other. I don't know. This is something that we created together in our relationship, let's say. But as we know, like we said, we need courage to set our boundaries and to say something and to feel and express what we feel.
Yes.
And courage is still needed, even if it feels safe enough. Still, you need courage, but it's a present to offer space and this safety for each other. And as I like it, especially working with people together, to find a way to be transparent and to offer you this space to be yourself. And I'm happy that it in real life situation really works out like this. Yeah. So in this meetup today, I think a lot of these essentials were already pointed out. Of course, when we are working in this 3-day workshop, we will explore this. We're going to explore this with presentations, with maybe case studies. We can talk. We can do role plays. We can practice yoga. We can do a lot of things to really go into this and practice all these principles. And in our next webinar, we will talk about these principles again, how to apply it also in more professional fields. Could be any professional fields working with people. So and that is.
Anneke, I just want to mention that the workshop that you're mentioning is that the workshop that you and I are going to be doing together in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
In March. Let me see, what's the date?
15, 16, and 17.
15, 16, and 17th of March.
Yeah.
And, which is going to be a combination of our work, Anneke's work as Be Your Own Therapist, which is something that I completely adhere to in terms of my liberation prison yoga. That's, we teach the teachers to be present, completely present, and to focus on the self first, as we kind of did in this webinar. And then my unconditional model, which we didn't really get into the unconditional model at all today. That's fine. We have one aspect, which is the aspect of the internal family systems, and self-acceptance is one aspect of the unconditional model. First self-acceptance, but then we use power dynamics to create awareness of the self and also awareness of ourselves towards others, and how we can use awareness of power dynamics to literally break out of our internal prison of looking up to people and looking down at people, our own power dynamics, and breaking out of internal power dynamics through healing to ultimately dissolve outer power dynamics, that we will not need the outer authorities anymore. And I keep saying, maybe in 1,000 years we're gonna have that new system in place. But we're gonna start it, darn it.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And what we need is us together, practice together, get together, and work through this. So this is what we're trying to do, online and in person. And well, of course, everybody is super invited to Amsterdam. Maybe for people who are already living in Europe, it's a little bit easier. But still, it's nice to join us for 3 days, and it's a nice city to make it into a little holiday as well. Why not? So this is in March 15, 16, and 17. Anneke and Anneke together in a workshop. And before that time, there will be well, at least one more webinar, depending also a little bit on the questions, because there's there maybe are more questions rising afterwards. Very often this happens as well. So it could be that you will have a question after we finish this, and maybe something keeps popping up in your head. Don't hesitate to ask us, and we will for sure address it next time in our next webinar, or like this. Let's see, there's a few people are saying, I'm just checking really quickly if there's questions.
All the people are saying thank you.
Great. Well, I'm so thank you. I'm so grateful for everybody who's here, because this is why we're doing this. We just want to support our our communities and share. Yeah,
absolutely. So yes, join us for our next webinar, and hopefully our workshop. That would be fantastic to see you on the boat. I just have to tell you, it's not only in Amsterdam, it's on a boat. And meanwhile, we will, if you do have immediate questions, we'll be happy to, we have our resources at hand. I have AnnekeLucas.com has a blog that actually addresses a lot of these topics through either my past story or present issues that I'm, writing about in this way. And Anneke has a network yoga therapy website that has a lot of information. Liberation Prison Yoga. The website has information, has a specific section on trauma-informed yoga as well, that you can read an article that is written that has a lot of background information and resources. And yes, as I said, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yes, for sure. And Facebook, of course, you can find us very easily on Facebook, Anneke Lucas and Anneke Sips, separate Facebook accounts. If you contact me through the Facebook group of Network Yoga Therapy is a good way. And if you tag me there, then I can easily answer questions so that also other people will see it. But if you're interested in webinars and our work together in Amsterdam, the advice is to check the website www.networkyogatherapy.com. Go to networkyogatherapy.com and sign up for the newsletter, because then once a month I'm sending a Reflect Now, it's just a reflection, and once a month I'm sending an overview of all the events that are happening. So webinars with Anneke and our training, you will be notified for sure. So that's the best way to stay in touch with us. And well, thank you so much, Anneke. I wish I could give you a hug. Well, this is a virtual hug for you.
Yeah, same here. And
yeah.
Jody the Younger just called us the Annekes. I think that's cute.
Yes, the Annekes. And we also are wearing the same ring today. This is not on purpose, but we are,
we have a lot in common.
So that's the Annekes wearing the same rings. We're very nicely in tune today. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anneke, for your time, for your energy, for your space. And
oh my goodness, Anneke, no, I'm really, thank you. Thank you.
Well,
I'm
thank you.
grateful to you. I'm so glad we did this.
Yes. Yeah, we did it. Yeah, we did it anyway. Thank you. And thanks everybody, and see you again next time. Bye everybody. Bye.